and welcome to Women in Anti-Feminism. My name is Sarah Peterson, and I will be discussing with you a brief history of women's opposition to various women's movements. We will explore the opposition women have had to feminism throughout the last century, including how women today are redefining what it means to be a feminist and what an empowered woman looks like. We ask that you take a critical look at your own views as you learn about anti-feminist women. Please enjoy. We hear the word feminism used all the time, whether it is in the media, on the internet, or thrown into conversation. But do you know what that word actually means? Feminism is defined as the advocacy of women's rights on the grounds of political, social, and economic equality to men. It is widely accepted that there are three separate movements within the American feminist movement. The first wave started in 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention. This wave focused primarily on gaining the right to vote for women and general suffrage for all. They obtained this goal in 1920 with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. The second wave of feminism started in the early 1960s. During this time, Betty Friedan wrote The Feminine Mystique. Women during this time primarily focused on gaining equality in the workforce with the Equal Pay Act of 1963, and reproductive rights such as gaining the right for married couples to use birth control and legalizing abortion. The major failure of the second wave movement was the Equal Rights Amendment, which, had it been ratified, made gender discrimination illegal in its entirety. A third wave started up in the 1990s and is arguably the least political of the three movements. This movement focuses on reclaiming the female identity and redefining perception of women in traditional gender roles, society, and sexuality. Anti-feminism is a fractured and seldom studied movement. Because of the varying ideologies within the movement and a large amount of opposition the movement has sustained, it is hard to understand concisely what the movement is about. Generally, though, anti-feminism is in opposition to the feminist movement, either in part or in whole. Sociologist Michael Flood says that anti-feminism denies one or all of the general principles of feminism, including that social arrangements among men and women are not naturally or divinely determined, society generally favors men in relationships between both sexes, and that there are ways to collectively make society more equal. Traditionally, female anti-feminists are women that oppose women entering public spheres that have been traditionally dominated by men, including political offices, voting, the workforce, and head of the household. Some women believed that feminism was the cause for destruction of the traditional family structure and the devaluation of traditional and religious morals. Modern anti-feminism tends to believe that feminism is not inclusive of other minorities and genders, and as such is an outdated or limiting movement. These anti-feminists aren't necessarily against women's rights, but the way in which feminists approach obtaining those rights. We are now going to look at the arguments against feminism through the women's suffrage movement at the start of the 20th century, the Equal Rights Act in the 1970s, some of the religious arguments anti-feminists have used, and what modern anti-feminism looks like. While the majority of women in the U.S. were in favor of gaining the right to vote, there were women who were vehemently opposed to it. In 1897, the New York State Association Opposed to Women's Suffrage was founded and had over 90 members by 1908. They were forced to concede when the 19th Amendment was passed. The organization had a magazine called The Anti-Suffragist, published by Mrs. William Winslow Crennel from 1908 to 1912, and then was renamed the Women's Protest for Wider Distribution. Another anti-suffragist and anarchist, Emma Goldman, thought that suffrage was a distraction from bigger issues from within the feminist movement and that it would not make a sizable difference. Oddly enough, Theodore Roosevelt's first cousin's widow, Kate, was also opposed to women gaining the right to vote and thought it was largely unnecessary and against nature. She believed, like many upper-class Protestants, that a woman was destined to be a childbearer, and because she had total freedom within her domestic sphere, shaking up those laws were unnatural. Phyllis Schlafly has been credited with being a key component in taking down the Equal Rights Amendment. While she started late in the game, having not organized a movement against the ERA until after 28 states had already ratified it, she played it well and was extremely successful in taking it down. Schlafly focused on the gender-specific rights that U.S. citizens had, such as a male-only draft and protection for widows and divorced mothers. She also argued that this amendment could allow for same-sex marriages and take away a woman's right to sue for custody of their child and their welfare benefits. She created the Stop ERA campaign and would storm legislation buildings with the quintessential housewife and hand out house-made breads, pies, and jams to evoke a sense of domesticity. Schlafly successfully thwarted the amendment's progress by halting the ratification process and convincing 5 states to rescind their ratification. Ironically, the domestic housewife she fought for was far from who she was as a constitutional lawyer, magazine editor, and political activist. There are many reasons why women today do not support the feminist movement. Some are against women's advancement, some do not believe it is necessary, and others believe that it seeks to paint a picture that all women are victims and all men are predators. What many women have expressed through the Women Against Feminism group is that feminism today seeks to place women in an elevated position above men, thereby promoting misandry. They chide feminists for being insensitive to male oppression and sexual assault. They claim that some feminists do not believe that men can be a victim in sexual assault and women are the only true victims. Most of these women represent a shift in feminist ideology. They do not necessarily oppose women's rights, but believe that the focus and approach modern feminists take is too limiting, discriminatory, and extreme. Feminism has taken on many forms over the years and has fought for the equality of women in the United States and around the world. It is important to discern for yourself how your own views fit into this broad and changing movement. Are we already an equal society? Do women have too many freedoms? What is your role in society? Think about where you want your fellow women to be in 20 years and what rights you want for yourself. Thank you for joining us today. Please enjoy the show.